Welcome back to the Xavier wing of the studios of WCLG. Today, in this lecture, we're going to talk about the Uniform Commercial Code and offer and acceptance. If you remember, under common law contracts, the offer and the acceptance must be mirror images of one another. That's the mirror image rule in common law contracts. In the Uniform Commercial Code, in the UCC, you do not need to have mirror image of offer and acceptance. You have to understand that there is no mirror image rule under the UCC. What there is that if you accept a contract, you can accept it by either making a promise to sell goods or by actually shipping those goods. In either case, you've got an acceptance of the contract. In other words, the offer is an offer to purchase, and the acceptance can be, well, it can be an acceptance, say I accept, or it can be a promise to ship, or it can be an actual shipment. Any of those ways are acceptance of a contract. And as you notice, under the UCC, you don't agree specifically to the terms and conditions of the contract. Now, what are the terms of the contract if you accept a contract, but you haven't agreed on the specific terms? Remember, there's no mirror image. There's no mirror image rule. So, what are the terms and conditions of the contract? If, in fact, the buyer applies different or additional terms to the contract, are they in the contract or are they not in the contract? It depends. Remember last lecture we talked about a merchant. Remember, a merchant is a person that deals in the goods or that has knowledge and experience, or has hired somebody that is a merchant. So if the contract is between a merchant, between two merchants, then the additional and different terms between the parties are in the contract unless one, the offer limits acceptance to the specific terms that were offered. Unless two, if the terms are materially different. If they're materially different, they're not in a contract. Or three, if the offeror objects in a reasonable time. If any of these three things happen, then the additional or different terms are not in the contract. This leads to what is called the battle of the forms. What's the battle of the forms? The battle of the forms is when I send my purchase order to the seller, and on the back there's a bunch of different terms and conditions, and the seller returns back his acceptance to me, and on the back of that person's form is a bunch of terms, but they're different. They're different than my original terms. And that goes back and forth, back and forth. The thing is that most of the time, since there's no problem with the contract, the battle of the forms never comes to fruition. But sometimes if there's a problem with the contract, for example, the widgets that are sent don't work, then you have to look to the forms to determine whose terms and conditions control. For example, my a purchase order may say that you are giving me a complete warranty. If the product doesn't work, you will pay me all of my damages. The buyer's form will say something like, there are no warranties. No, they're complete warranties. There are no problems. You cannot get anything back if the products are wrong. That's the battle of the forms. The forms go back and forth between the buyer and the seller, and they're different. The Uniform Commercial Code, the UCC, says what happens between the parties. If they're both merchants, then the additional terms and conditions are part of it unless one of these three conditions takes place. If one of the parties or both of the parties are not merchants, then none of the additional or different terms and conditions are part of the contract. So it depends on whether merchants are involved, and you have to know what merchants are, and you have to know if merchants are involved in the contract. Okay, that's the battle of the forms under the UCC. So we'll talk about shipping and risk of loss in our next lecture. Thank you.